or data, the operating system for modern media. Hello, welcome to a live edition of GFK Survey 2 here in Australia. All right, well, the headline straight away from these numbers is ARN saying, no Kyle and Jackie O, no worries. Sydney has had a pretty good result for ARN, considering all the turmoil they've had recently. So we'll get into those numbers very shortly. If you want to make any comments, you can always comment along on our live stream. Or if you're listening to this later, please feel free to jump on our Instagram and make any comments you like on Survey 2. Let's crack straight in because there's some good results to talk about. Let's start with Sydney, and Sydney's number one FM station is Smooth 95.3. And number one in breakfast is 2GB. I'll come back to those in a sec because I know you're all dying to know what happened with Kyle and Jackie O. Well, the reality is Kiss Breakfast was down a point, 12.7 to 11.7. But considering the survey period was February the 8th to April the 4th, that's a pretty good win for Kiss. They'd take that every day of the week. And overall, they only fell slightly from a 9 to an 8.7, I think. Yes, that's right. So not much going on there for Sydney. 8.2, sorry. Not much going on for Kiss in Sydney. Gold in Sydney, let's have a look at Christian. Christian has gone from a 6.1 to 5.5. So he's still got a lot of work to do in Sydney, and it's going to take him a little while. No reflection on his content, I don't think, at this stage. It's actually the fact that there was a 20-year breakfast show before, and some people who are watching or listening to that breakfast show went, you know what, I'm actually okay without listening to radio, or I'm not quite used to Christian yet. But I think it's going to be a long road to hoe for Christian. It'll take him a little while there in breakfast in Sydney to make a mark, and he's going to struggle without any huge marketing budget in Sydney. But so hopefully he gets some of those great ideas he has, those creative ideas to get listeners going, and he can kick along. Also in Sydney, we saw that Today FM has had a slight rise, 4.4 to 4.7 on the 10 plus. And breakfast is up 3.6 to 3.9. Elsewhere, all pretty static. Shout out to 2UE in breakfast, who went up 0.7. That's probably the biggest rise of the whole survey, obviously off a smaller base. 2GB doing really well. Ben Fordham basically held ground from 16.6 to 16.8 to be the number one overall in Sydney. From a Cume perspective in Sydney, Kyle and Jack actually went up, or the breakfast show went up from 636 to 673. So again, you know, the sky's not falling on radio in Sydney. There's still lots of things that people like listening to and lots of shows that are worth listening to. So I don't think there's much more to say on Sydney apart from we'll probably see more of the effect of Kyle and Jackie O in Survey 3, which will be the next one out in about 6 to 8 weeks' time. All right, let's go to Melbourne. Melbourne, Gold, number one. Once again, Gold 104.3 are the number one station in my hometown of Melbourne. And Ross and Russ are number one in breakfast on 3AW. A great result again for Ross and Russ. They're the most consistent, stable radio show you'll find in Australia at the moment. They're an 18.9. Last survey, they're an 18.9 now. If you're an advertiser and you're looking to buy radio, a safe bet is 3AW, basically, because that breakfast show and that format is consistent, it's stable, it's brand safe, and people rely on it here in Melbourne. So well done to the team at AW, currently 9 radio, soon to be Tapped Radio. Well done to you guys. Other news from Melbourne, Fox went up from 8.8, 9.6 in Brekkie, so that's Fifi, Feather, Nick. Kiss Breakfast in Melbourne, without Kyle and Jackie O, went up. So Sydney, it's come up a little bit. Melbourne, it's gone up a little bit, 5.1 to 5.4. So, you know, with 8 weeks or so in that survey period, with no Kyle and Jack, you'd have to suggest that the audience actually likes the change so far in Melbourne. Triple M went up. Footy season is always going to do well with Mick in breakfast from 6.8 to 7.5. And Jason, Lauren and Clint went down slightly, sort of 11.1 to 10.3. So not much movement there. Fox would be pretty happy with that, I think, today. Fox had a good day overall, and with Brekkie. And from a workday perspective, yeah, pretty stable, up a little bit for Gold. And Christian was pretty stable, 10.6, 10.5. So pretty negligible there when you consider what the margin of error is in any survey. All right, that's Melbourne. Let's go to Brizzy. Triple M. You'd be happy if you're at Triple M in Brizzy, all the crew up there, because they are just dominating pretty much the market. 13.3 overall, up from 13.1. Closely followed behind was Kiss, 11.7 down to 11.1, but still in the 11s, which is great for them. B105 pretty stable. 4BH was up a little bit. They've got a huge share in Brizzy, 10.9, so they're really in the pack there with Triple M, KISS and B105. And in the breakfast race, so we had some new breakfast shows obviously hanging around in Brisbane this year with Nova particularly. They went up 9.3 to 10.3. We know Kip and Robin and Corey are back, and they went from a 12.3 to 12.1, so very stable. ARN would be very happy with that they didn't actually lose a lot of audience in the changeover from sort of Survey 8, Survey 1 through to here. B105 is back a little bit in Brekkie, and 4BH is pretty solid there with Barbecue Bob, 10.8. Just down a little bit from 11.2. So Brizzy is really a Triple M town. We can see that. We know that Triple M is very well liked, and again, another safe, consistent heritage format. And you can see why advertisers like radio so much, because when you've got those shows and those personalities that deliver those constant results, it's actually a really good thing to put your brand against. Let's go to Adelaide. Again, a Triple M town. So Triple M overall, number 1, 12.9. Back slightly, but nothing to worry about there. Nova 11.2 and SAFM 10.4. KISS was a 10.2, so they're up. So Ben and Liam have inherited a rise. They're going to start on a higher platform than they probably thought, because breakfast on KISS went from 8 up to 9. So Ben and Liam will be happy with that. Obviously, they're going to start getting a bit of cume flowing through with their marketing as well, and all the stuff they do in stunts and on the streets. In terms of breakfast overall, Triple M was number 1, 13.9, and Nova and SAFM tied on 10.2. So those breakfast shows, Nova and SAFM are kind of going a little bit toe for toe there. All right, let's go to Perth, and then we'll come back for a full whip around. So Perth, pretty clearly a Nova town. Nova has been, again, solid and consistent. That's what gets rewarded in surveys. You can see that, and you can see why it's really hard to let go of a breakfast show. And it's really hard to do anything when you're trying to change in radio, because the measurement says we'll reward you for being consistent, we'll reward you for staying the same. And those stations and the brands that advertise on those stations are really a good partnership to stick together, because it works. It really does. So Nova in Perth, down slightly from 16.1 to 15.6. They won't be worried about that because they're still miles ahead of Mix 94.5. Gold is on 11 and Triple M's on 8. And Brekkie, yeah, look, I mean, that breakfast show is the heritage breakfast show of the market. It's been there forever, and it's remained pretty stable, 17.5. I mean, interestingly, in Perth, Nova Breakfast is about 5 share points ahead of the next closest, which is Mix on 12.6, who had a good rise off 11.3, and everyone else was reasonably the same. So what do we learn from this survey? That's always an interesting thing to have a think about. What are the things that are going on around the country? Well, I would say that the Sydney breakfast market hasn't really been measured yet. There's been enough change. Remember, Ricky Lee and Tim's change came on Nova Breakfast a little into survey. So they were probably going a little bit late in terms of their measurement. So even though they went up a little bit in Brekkie, Nova went from 8.4 to a 9. I'd expect you're not really going to get a good read on Ricky Lee and Tim probably towards the end of the year, to be honest. When you get a full seasonal aspect, I think that's sometimes underrated, is that with radio being habitual listening and people listening to winter sport and stuff, you really want to look at a long-term view on any survey result, I think, rather than any knee-jerking or anything that happens survey to survey. I certainly remember being in rooms where you go up 0.1 and everyone celebrates, and you go down 0.1 and everyone's really sad. But the reality is you want to have a look at the trend year on year. So if you're a P1, I'll be doing a little bit of a year-on-year trend, which I'll stick in your inbox later today. If you haven't signed up to be a P1, just go to thequarterhour.com. And I'll be showing you the year-on-year figures, because I think they give a better trend overall. Speaking of overall, hot off the press, the media release from Commercial Radio Australia, a record number of commercial radio reached 12.8 million weekly listeners, which is the most in the last 4 years. So, in fact, I think it's the most ever, but it's actually the last 4 years it's exceeded 12 million. Yeah, that's what the statement says. And Lizzie Young, the CEO of Commercial Radio and Audio, says a record audience last survey topped again this survey. When a medium delivers at this scale, this consistently, it tells you that Australians rely on local and live commercial radio, and brands can too. And as Australia's only 100% locally owned and operated media channel, every advertising dollar supports local journalism, emergency broadcasting, and thousands of Australian jobs. Hear, hear. Yeah, there's lots to like about these survey figures. Obviously, all of the tabloids are going to go for the Kyle and Jack headline, which is going to be pretty much nothing at the moment. There's nothing really to say. Except I would say if you're in the ARN bunker today, you'd be really, really pleased so far that the impact has pretty much been negligible. What happens in the longer term, we will find out. All right, well, that's all from our survey results live episode. Before we leave today, a quick message on James Valentine, who sadly passed away from cancer just yesterday. Very sad news, obviously, and he had been unwell for a while, and he really brought his audience in on that journey. And to all his fans and radio fans, I think he was a big hit amongst the radio community as well. James Valentine was just one of those consummate broadcasters who worked with his audience to make a compelling radio show on ABC 702 every day. So on behalf of me and every one of his fans, valet to James and best wishes to his family and also his colleagues, many of whom might be listening to this. He will be very, very sorely missed. All right, well, that's the quarter hour for today. Tomorrow, we're in court. Kyle and Jackie O. Will they turn up for the directions hearing? What will happen? We'll have all the analysis and breaking news on Kyle and Jack tomorrow in your podcast feed and on YouTube and on Instagram. But for now, dear listener, that's been the quarter hour. See ya.